Mom said Thanksgiving was canceled due to budget issues. We'll celebrate next year, she promised. That night, I saw photos of a huge family feast on the internet. Everyone was there except me. When I called the next day, she acted like nothing happened. Before we begin the story, take a moment to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support means the world to our channel and helps us spread more shocking true stories to light. Now, let's get started. The illusion of a perfect family. I never imagined that something as simple as Thanksgiving could expose the truth I had spent years trying to ignore. To outsiders, my family looked picture perfect. Holiday gatherings, shared traditions, the usual sibling squabbles over who got the last slice of pie. But behind closed doors, it was a different story, a story I had never dared to tell. My name is Ethan. I'm 26 years old, the middle child in a family of 5. And if you've ever been the middle child, you already know what that means. Invisible, forgettable, stuck somewhere between the golden child and the baby of the family, trying to matter. My older brother, Liam, was everything a parent could want. Smart, successful, the one who always seemed to make the right choices. Mom and Dad adored him. And then there was my younger sister, Sophie, the baby, the delicate one, the one who could do no wrong in their eyes. And me? Well, I was just there. Thanksgiving this year was supposed to be different, simpler. A few weeks before the holiday, Mom had made an announcement. We're cutting back this year, Ethan. You know how things are, money's tight. We won't be doing a big feast, but we'll still spend the day together. It'll be nice. I didn't mind. I was used to hearing about budget issues. If anything, I welcomed the idea of a quiet dinner at home, just the 3 of us. Maybe this time, we could actually enjoy each other's company instead of getting caught up in the usual chaos. But then, the day before Thanksgiving, I got a text from Mom. Hey, Ethan, we're canceling dinner tomorrow. Things are tight, and everyone's staying home. Hope you understand. We'll do something next year. I read it twice, trying to make sense of it. Canceling Thanksgiving? Just like that? Sure, I knew things had been rough financially before, but we'd never skipped the holiday altogether. It didn't sit right with me. But I told myself, fine. If I don't want to do it, I won't push it. I'll just stay home, relax, maybe order takeout. At least, that's what I thought, until the next morning. Because that's when everything changed. The betrayal unfolds. Thanksgiving morning was supposed to be just another quiet day. No family dinner, no long conversations over pumpkin pie, just me, a cozy sweatshirt, and a lazy afternoon. But then my phone buzzed. Instagram notification. I almost didn't check it. But when I did, my stomach dropped. It was a picture. A beautifully set dinner table. Candles flickering. A golden brown turkey at the center, surrounded by mashed potatoes, stuffing, cranberry sauce, the works. The caption? So thankful for this family, red heart. And just below it, my mom, Dad, Liam, and Sophie all tagged. I stared at the screen, my mind scrambling to make sense of it. They had Thanksgiving without me. I blinked, hoping I was seeing things wrong. Maybe it was an old picture. Maybe they were just reminiscing about past holidays. But no, the timestamp was from today. They lied to me. I sat there, frozen, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. I wasn't even angry at first, just numb. How could they do this? How could they tell me Thanksgiving was canceled, then turn around and have a perfect family dinner without me? I wasn't an afterthought. I wasn't forgotten. I was excluded, and I had to know why. Without even thinking, I grabbed my jacket, slipped on my shoes, and drove to Sophie's house. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, my mind racing through 100 different possibilities. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe there was some logical explanation. Or maybe I was right all along. Maybe I never really mattered to them the way I wished I did. Either way, I was about to find out. Walking into the lie. The drive to Sophie's house felt longer than it should have. My mind kept replaying the image of that perfect Thanksgiving table, the smiling faces of my family, the caption that said it all. So thankful for this family. Except, apparently, I wasn't part of this family. When I pulled up in front of her house, I saw the proof I needed. Mom's car, Dad's, Liam's. They were all here. I gripped the steering wheel, forcing myself to breathe. I wasn't even sure what I was going to say. I just knew I had to see it with my own eyes. To make them say it to my face. I climbed out of the car, walked up the driveway, and knocked. Loudly. A few seconds later, the door swung open, and there she was. Sophie. She smiled like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't just found out that my own family had cut me out of Thanksgiving. "Oh, hey, Ethan. Come on in," she chirped, her voice way too bright, way too cheerful. I just stared at her. Was she serious? My pulse pounded in my ears, but I kept my expression calm, controlled. "I thought Thanksgiving was canceled this year," I said evenly. For a split second, I saw it. The way her smile faltered. The way her eyes darted away from mine. But she recovered quickly. "What do you mean?" she asked, feigning confusion. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped past her into the house. And there it was. The long dining table, covered in steaming dishes, rich with the smell of butter, garlic, cinnamon. The kind of spread we only ever had on special occasions. Turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, cranberry sauce, green beans, fresh baked rolls, pumpkin pie. It was the kind of Thanksgiving dinner that took hours to prepare. The kind of dinner that had been planned in advance. The kind of dinner that wasn't just thrown together last minute after budget issues. I swallowed hard, my gaze sweeping the room. Mom and Dad were on the couch, wine glasses in hand, chatting. Liam was already at the table, loading his plate with food. They all looked relaxed, comfortable, like this was normal, like this was fine. I turned back to Sophie, who was still standing by the door, shifting uncomfortably under my stare. "Mom texted me," I said, my voice steady. "She told me Thanksgiving was canceled because of budget issues, that everyone was staying home." Sophie said nothing. I took a slow breath, my chest tight. They had lied. They had planned this, and they didn't even bother to come up with a good excuse. "So what's going on?" I asked, my voice sharp now. She hesitated. Then, finally, she gestured toward the living room. "Mom and Dad are right there. Maybe you should ask them." Oh, I planned to, because I wanted to hear the excuse straight from them. And I wanted to see if they had even the slightest bit of guilt when they said it. The moment of truth. I walked into the living room, my footsteps slow, deliberate. Mom and Dad were sitting comfortably on the couch, wine glasses in hand, deep in conversation. They didn't even notice me at first. Liam, on the other hand, had definitely seen me. He was at the table, lazily scooping mashed potatoes onto his plate, smirking like this was just another episode of family drama he could sit back and enjoy. I clenched my jaw and turned to Mom. "Hey, Mom," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "I thought we weren't doing Thanksgiving this year." Her head snapped up. For the briefest second, her expression froze, like she'd been caught red-handed. But then, just as quickly, she plastered on a smile. "Oh, Ethan, sweetheart," she said, her tone suddenly sweet, too sweet. "We just couldn't cancel this year. You know how it is. We wanted to do something special for Liam and Sophie." My stomach twisted. There it was. Right there. She didn't even try to hide it. I let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Right. So you canceled Thanksgiving for me, but still had it for them?" I said, my voice cold. Mom blinked. "It's not like that," she said quickly. "We just thought you were too busy. You're always working, and we didn't want you to feel pressure to come." I stared at her. That was the best excuse she could come up with? I heard Liam snort from across the room. My head snapped toward him. "Something funny?" I asked sharply. He shrugged, shoveling a bite of turkey into his mouth. "Nothing. Just the usual drama," he muttered under his breath. I felt my fists clench at my sides. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice slow, deliberate. "You canceled Thanksgiving, told me there was no dinner, no gathering. But in reality, you just didn't invite me? Was I that much of an inconvenience?" Silence. Mom opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, she actually looked guilty. Dad, who had been quiet this whole time, finally spoke up. "Ethan, don't be dramatic," he said, setting down his wine glass. "It's just dinner. Just dinner." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. No, it wasn't just dinner. It was the fact that they didn't even care enough to lie properly. It was the fact that they had excluded me so casually, like it was nothing. It was the fact that they only ever seemed to value me when they needed something from me. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "You know what?" I said, shaking my head. "Forget it. Enjoy your perfect little Thanksgiving." I turned on my heel and started toward the door. For the first time, Mom actually panicked. Ethan, wait. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. And that was just the beginning. The breaking point. I stepped outside, slamming the door behind me. The cold air hit my face, but did nothing to cool the fire burning in my chest. I had spent years shrugging off the favoritism, making excuses for them, telling myself it didn't really matter, that I was just overthinking things. But this wasn't something I could ignore. They had planned a whole Thanksgiving dinner, set the table, cooked the food, took pictures, and posted them online, all while pretending I didn't exist. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my breath coming in short, shaky bursts. I wasn't going to cry. I refused to, but I wasn't okay. Not even close. I started the engine, pulling out of the driveway faster than I probably should have. I didn't even know where I was going. I just needed to get away. As I drove, my mind reeled. Why? Why would they do this? Was it easier for them if I wasn't there? Did they just not care? Had I really been fooling myself all these years, thinking I was part of the family, when, in reality, I was just some optional extra? And then, an even worse thought hit me. Maybe they knew I would take it. Maybe they knew I'd be upset, but they also knew I wouldn't fight back, that I'd swallow my pride, pretend it didn't hurt, and come running back to them the next time they needed me. Because that's what I always did. I had been there for them countless times. When Dad lost his job a few years ago, I helped cover bills until he got back on his feet. When Sophie needed someone to babysit her kids last minute, I was always the one she called. And Mom had spent months talking about how much she and Dad needed a new car. Their old one was falling apart, and I had wanted help. So I had already spoken to a dealership, put down a deposit, and was planning to surprise them with it. Because that's what a good son does, right? But now, all I could think about was how easy it had been for them to cut me out, to lie to me, to pretend I didn't exist. I pulled into an empty parking lot and took out my phone. The text I sent was short, simple. Cancel the order. I'm no longer interested in purchasing the car. I stared at the message for a long moment before finally hitting send. And when I did, I felt lighter. Like for the first time, I was actually taking control of something. They would figure out on their own. Just like I always had to. The fallout begins. I knew it wouldn't take long for them to find out. And sure enough, the next morning, my phone buzzed. Mom. I let it ring a few times before answering. Ethan, she said, her voice softer than usual. What's going on? I haven't heard from you since yesterday. I clenched my jaw, gripping my phone tighter. Nothing much. Just thinking about things. Silence. I could hear her breathing, like she was trying to figure out the best way to spin this. Look, she started carefully. I know things were a little tense last night, but we didn't mean to hurt your feelings. It's just, you're always so busy, and we didn't want you to feel guilty about missing dinner. There was again, that same excuse. Like they had done me a favor by lying to me. I let out a slow breath, forcing my voice to stay calm. You didn't want me to feel guilty? I repeated. So instead, you made sure I didn't even have the option to come? She hesitated. It's not like that, sweetheart. We just thought. But then, just like I knew it would, the conversation took the turn I had been expecting. Ethan, about the car. My stomach twisted. Of course. That was why she was calling. We heard you canceled the order. What's going on? I closed my eyes for a second, exhaling through my nose. Yeah, I did. Why? I could hear the tension in her voice now, the underlying frustration she was barely holding back. I could have told her the truth, that I was done being used, that I was tired of giving everything while getting nothing in return, that I was finally choosing myself for once. But instead, I kept my answer short. I just don't think it's the right time. Another pause. Then, her tone sharpened. Ethan, don't do this now. After everything we've done for you. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. There it was. The guilt trip. The reminder that I somehow owed them for simply existing. I'm sorry, I said flatly, cutting her off. But I think it's better this way. I could hear her voice crack just slightly as she said, You really don't want to help us anymore, do you? I swallowed hard. Because the truth was, I always had. But they had made it clear I wasn't part of their family. Not really. Not unless they needed something from me. And I wasn't going to be their backup plan anymore. No, Mom, I said, surprising even myself with how final my voice sounded. I don't. The silence that followed was heavier than anything she could have said. And then, finally she spoke. But this time her tone had changed. It was no longer soft, no longer pleading. It was cold, sharp, unforgiving. Fine, don't help us. But don't expect us to be there for you when you need something either. I almost laughed, like they had ever been there for me before. I let out a slow breath, my grip tightening on my phone. I guess we'll see, won't we? I said simply. And then I hung up. I was done. The fallout begins. I woke up the next morning to my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Mom's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. I sighed, rubbing my hands over my face before finally answering. Ethan, Mom's voice was softer than usual, laced with something almost like guilt. I haven't heard from you since yesterday. What's going on? I let out a slow breath, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Nothing much. Just thinking about things. There was a pause. A long one. I could hear her breathing on the other end, like she was trying to figure out the best way to spin this. Ethan, I know last night was a little tense, but we didn't mean to hurt your feelings, she said carefully. It's just, you're always so busy. We didn't want to make you feel obligated to come. I clenched my jaw. There it was. The gaslighting. So you lied to me instead? I said flatly. We weren't trying to lie, she rushed to say. We figured you'd understand. Understand? Understand what exactly? That my presence at Thanksgiving was so unimportant that they didn't even think I'd care? Before I could respond, she changed the subject completely. By the way, she said, her voice suddenly clipped. Your father and I heard you cancel the car. What's going on with that? And just like that, I felt everything inside me snap. Of course, that was what she really wanted to talk about. Not the lie, not the betrayal, not the fact that they had excluded me from my own family's holiday. The car, the thing I was supposed to buy for them. I swallowed down the bitter laugh rising in my throat. Yeah, I did, I said simply. I don't think I want to buy it anymore. Another long silence. Then the voice I knew all too well. The one she used when she was trying to manipulate me. Ethan, we've always taken care of you. And now, when we need something, you're just going to let us down like this. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered how I felt standing in Sophie's house. Seeing them all there. Realizing I had been so easy to cut out of their plans. I inhaled sharply. No, Mom. I said, my voice calm, final. I'm just done being used. Her breath hitched. For a moment, I thought she might actually apologize. But instead, her voice turned cold. Fine, she said. Do what you want. But don't expect us to be there for you when you need something. I almost laughed at that. Yeah. I said, guess we'll see, won't we? And with that, I hung up. I was done. Really done. Drawing the line. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling, letting the silence settle around me. That conversation should have made me feel worse. It should have made me question myself, made me wonder if I was really the bad guy here. But instead, I felt lighter. Because for the first time in my life, I hadn't let them manipulate me into feeling guilty for setting boundaries. And I wasn't about to start now. But of course, they weren't done with me yet. A few hours later, Dad called. I let it go to voicemail. Then Sophie texted, Ethan, you're really overreacting. We didn't mean to hurt you. Just talk to Mom and fix this, right? Because I was the one who needed to fix things. Because I was the problem. I ignored it. But then came a text that made my blood run cold. From Liam. You're being selfish. You'll regret this when Dad's gone. I sat up, gripping my phone. That was a low blow. I knew Dad's health hadn't been great the past couple of years. He'd had some issues. Nothing life-threatening yet, but enough to be a concern. And Liam? Liam knew exactly what he was doing with that message. They weren't just trying to guilt-trip me. They were weaponizing Dad's health to pull me back in. For a brief moment, it worked. My heart clenched, and I felt that old, familiar pull, the one that always made me cave. But then I remembered something. Not once had they called me when I was struggling, when I was working extra hours to help cover their bills. Where was the concern for my well-being? When I had sacrificed my own plans to babysit Sophie's kids, where was the gratitude? When I had been nothing but an afterthought at Thanksgiving, where was their guilt then? And now, suddenly, they needed me? I took a deep breath. my hand steady as I typed out my response. Liam, don't. You don't get to play that card. If Dad needs something, he can call me himself. Otherwise, leave me out of it. I hit send, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. The last straw. The next few days were eerily quiet. No texts, no calls, no sudden visits. For a brief moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they had finally gotten the message. But then, on a cold Saturday afternoon, Mom showed up at my door. I wasn't surprised. This was her pattern. Whenever she realized she couldn't guilt-trip me over the phone, she'd try face-to-face manipulation instead. I opened the door and found her standing there, arms crossed, looking different, tired, like this whole situation had actually taken a toll on her. Ethan, she sighed. Can I come in? I hesitated. Every instinct told me to shut the door, cut the conversation short, but against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her in. She walked into the living room, looking around like she was searching for something to hold against me. I just want to talk, she said softly. I stayed standing. Go ahead, she sighed, wringing her hands together. Look, I know you're upset, and I get it. I do. But, Ethan, we're family. You don't just throw family away over something like this. I almost laughed. Throw family away? I echoed. You mean like how you all threw me away at Thanksgiving? She flinched. Good, because I needed her to feel it. Really feel it. Ethan, we didn't mean to hurt you. Things just got complicated, she said weakly. Complicated? I repeated. Mom, you lied to me. You told me we weren't having Thanksgiving, then went and had a perfect dinner without me. That's not complicated. That's deliberate. She exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of her nose. I was just trying to keep the peace. No, you were trying to keep me out of the way. She didn't deny it. Instead, she switched tactics. Her voice softened, her eyes glistening like she was on the verge of tears. Ethan, your father's health isn't great. The doctors are saying he might need surgery soon. I don't know how to handle this alone. And there it was. The final manipulation. I almost let it work. Almost. But then I thought about how easy it had been for them to pretend I didn't exist. How easily they had cut me out of their family's holiday. How they only ever seemed to notice me when they needed something. I swallowed the lump in my throat, standing my ground. I'm sorry Dad's sick. I really am. But you don't get to treat me like an afterthought and then expect me to save you when things go wrong. Her lip trembled. We're your family, Ethan. Funny, I said bitterly. You didn't seem to think so last week. For the first time, I saw a realization dawn on her face. Maybe she finally understood that this wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was about everything. Years of being treated like I didn't matter. Years of being used, dismissed, and taken for granted. And now I was done. Mom swallowed hard, straightening her posture. So that's it, she said coldly. You're just going to walk away from us? I met her gaze, my voice steady. No, Mom. I'm just done letting you walk all over me. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out the door. And I let her go. No turning back. The door clicked shut behind her, but I didn't move. I stood there, staring at it, listening to the sound of her footsteps fading down the driveway. Part of me had expected her to turn around, to say something else, to try one last time to guilt-trip me back into place. But she didn't. And that silence? That silence felt heavier than anything she could have said. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My hands were still clenched in a fist at my sides, my body tense, like I had just walked out of a fight that wasn't quite over yet. Because maybe it wasn't. I knew how this worked. Mom wasn't done. She'd try again. Maybe through Dad. Maybe through Sophie. Maybe by getting Liam to throw more cheap shots my way. But this time, I wasn't going to fall for it. A few days passed. No calls. No texts. Then Rachel reached out. Ethan, you really screwed things up. Mom's been crying nonstop. Dad's pissed. You're breaking their hearts. Are you really going to keep pushing them away? I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. This was exactly what I had expected. The problem wasn't that they had hurt me. The problem, in their eyes, was that I wasn't just accepting it and moving on like I always did. I took a deep breath and typed out my response. Rachel, I'm not the one who pushed anyone away. They did that when they lied to me. I'm just done pretending it's okay. I hit send and turned my phone on silent. I wasn't playing this game anymore. The last attempt. Days turned into weeks. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, they had finally given up. Maybe they had accepted that I was serious this time. But then, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, Dad called. I hesitated for a long time before answering. "Ethan," he said, his voice heavy. "We need to talk." I stayed silent, waiting. "Your mother's really struggling with this. She's not sleeping. She's not eating right. She just wants her son back." I exhaled slowly, rubbing my temple. "Dad," I said calmly, "Mom didn't lose me. She pushed me away. And now that I'm finally standing up for myself, suddenly I'm the bad guy." He sighed. "You're making this harder than it has to be." I almost laughed at that. "No," I said. "I'm making it as hard as it should have been a long time ago." Silence. Then, just when I thought he might actually back off, he said it. "You know, son, at the end of the day, family is all you have." I closed my eyes. I knew exactly what he was doing. This was his version of an ultimatum. "Is that right?" I said quietly, because I could have sworn that, a few weeks ago, my own family had no problem pretending I didn't exist. More silence. And for the first time, I wondered if, deep down, he knew I was right. "You don't mean that," he finally said. "Yeah," I said. "Then tell me, when Mom sent that text canceling Thanksgiving, did you even question it? Did you even ask where I was?" The pause before he answered told me everything I needed to know. "I hope you don't regret this one day, Ethan," he said, his voice colder now. "Guess we'll find out," I said, and then I hung up. And just like that, I knew I was never going back. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.